So all right, hello out there and welcome. This is Beck Barnes of Cotton Grower, and I am coming at you from the historic Cotton Grower Sound Studios here in lovely Memphis, Tennessee, where we are getting drenched at the moment, and it doesn't look like that's going to let up anytime soon, as I understand it. Talking about 6 inches here in the Mid-South over the course of the next couple of days. So we hope you are keeping dry out there, whether you are anywhere in the belt, not just the Mid-South. If you're coming at us from Shallow Water, Texas, or from Water Valley, Mississippi, we welcome you back to the award-winning Cotton Companion podcast. This is our 65th episode. So the Companion is retirement eligible, as I understand it now, but it's we're not planning on slowing down anytime soon. I'm joined, as always, today by my partner in crime, Cotton Grower's senior editor, Mr. Jim Steadman. Howdy, Jim.
Hello, Beck. And retirement does cross my mind from time to time, but you know, it's just such a fleeting thought, because I really enjoy what we're doing here, and certainly with the whole publication and with all the good folks out there we get to work with.
Yeah, no doubt. We are, as I say, here in the office on the second week of February. Steadman and I are in here talking about the Oscars that just took place last night, and all of the head-shaking, head-scratching moments from that deal. But let me say this, fellas, if you are listening to me today, you are reminded, you are forewarned, you got to run out and get those chocolates or those flowers or those dinner reservations ASAP today, because Valentine's is coming up and you are running out of time on this holiday created by Hallmark. Don't tell my wife that I said that. We are also a week out. We are leading up into the NCC's annual meeting, which is going to take place down there in New Orleans. And no doubt some of y'all listening will be heading down to the French Quarter this Friday or sometime thereabout. So we wish you safe travels and happy eating while you're down there. Don't eat too much. The first thing we want to do today, though, is to bring you a brief message from our sponsors, the good folks at Phytogen, who help us keep our bills paid here. So let's do that now.
Phytogen is pleased to sponsor the Cotton Companion, bringing you the latest news to help you thrive all season long.
Okay, we are, as always, so appreciative of our sponsors. We are going to, as we always do, follow up that Phytogen ad with a custom content segment featuring our very own custom content editor, Robin Sickberg. And she recently had a chance to sit down and talk with our friend, Dr. Ken Leger, who is Phytogen's cotton development specialist. And we're going to bring you that custom interview segment right now.
Hello, I'm Robin Sickberg, custom content editor for Meister Media Worldwide, publisher of Cotton Grower magazine. I'm here today with Dr. Ken Leger, Phytogen Cotton Development Specialist, covering parts of West Texas and Southwest Oklahoma. So welcome to the program.
Glad to be here.
Well, I know much of the Southwest this year experienced a lot of challenges throughout the whole 2019 growing season. And what were some of the issues you saw with growers in your area?
Well, 2019 started out with cool, wet conditions, which some of the crop was planted into and experienced. Then the larger part of the crop really had to wait for those conditions to improve. So we ended up with somewhat of a late planted crop that some of it actually switched to another crop, not cotton. But then that late crop was also complicated by sort of a catch-up time to handle weed control. Then mid-July happened, and we had extremely high temperatures coupled with drought. And really those conditions held throughout the season. We were very fortunate to have a warm September that allowed us to mature the crop, but then it all came down in mid-October with an early season freeze that shortened the season. So it really was a roller coaster ride for 2019.
I bet growers were happy to turn the calendar to January 2020 this year.
Absolutely.
So what could Phytogen specifically do with their breeding, or what traits do they have to help growers overcome some of these regional challenges?
Well, certainly anytime you're trying to plant into substandard conditions like cool and wet conditions, our early season vigor that we're very proud of and we breed specifically for really helped put us up above our competition in that regard. We had growers comment that they lost all of our competitor brands but the only cotton they were able to keep were the Phytogen brands because we had that early season vigor that helped make it through those tough conditions. Now, I alluded to earlier about weed control was complicated because of the late start. Certainly growers that grew Phytogen had the advantage of the Enlist weed control system that allowed them to go over the top with Enlist herbicides, glyphosate, glufosinate. Then one other trait that we're seeing really become synonymous with the Phytogen brand is root knot nematode resistance. We have the industry-leading root knot nematode resistance genes that allows up to 90% reduction of nematodes after growing, and we're really seeing that take off with growers. Then even though 2019 was too hot for it to be a really bad verticillium wilt year, growers know that pest will come back in a normal year, and we're really starting to get attention with our verticillium wilt tolerant varieties that we're having more and more within our portfolio. So we have a lot of tools to attack the tremendous challenges that we experience in the Southwest.
Well, I'd love to be able to get into some of the specific Phytogen brand varieties specifically for the Southwest, but I don't think we have time for that this time. Would you come back next time and talk about that?
Absolutely.
Excellent. Well, I think we've got to wrap it up. Thank you so much for being on the program, and growers can go to phytogen.com for more information.
All right, a big thank you to Robin and to Ken of Phytogen there. Ken Leger of Phytogen, I should say. Again, we are always grateful for those fine folks at Corteva who bring you all, among other things, that excellent Phytogen brand cottonseed and also the cutting-edge Enlist weed control system. But this is a very special episode today because we are going to have a new sponsor joining us, and you folks will hear from the fine people at Cotton Incorporated later in this episode, and they're going to have a brief message about their Cotton Trust Protocol program. That's something that you are definitely going to want to tune in for. So again, thank you. A big thanks to our sponsors today, Phytogen and Cotton Incorporated. Okay. With that, we want to get the ball rolling on this 65th episode of the Cotton Companion, and we got lots to get into. Jim is going to be leading us in our news segments where potential topics include, but are not limited to, this Chinese trade deal and the amount of patience this is going to require from the farming community, as well as a looming deadline on the ARC/PLC front. You guys will want to listen to that, both informative and thought-provoking news segment from Jim here in a bit. Not to put too much pressure on you there, Jim. After that,
I'm just shaking my head.
Yeah.
Quaking in my boots at this point.
After that, we are going to bring y'all an interview that Jim conducted recently with Miss Jennifer Crumpler, who is the Fiber Development Manager for BASF, and she's talking about the surge of popularity around that E3 program among cotton's end users. I think they've had some developments on that program since we last checked in with them. So we do want to mention, before we jump into the real bulk of our show, one headline we're going to talk briefly here that y'all may have missed at the tail end of January, and I actually just got done writing about this for our March issue, but that was that the EPA once again found that there is no link between glyphosate and cancer. A January 30 headline from Reuters read, U.S. EPA reaffirms that glyphosate does not cause cancer. So, the Environmental Protection Agency, they had cause to re-review this widely used herbicide after a spate of juries in the U.S., I believe there were a couple over there on the West Coast, had awarded millions to plaintiffs in cases alleging that this herbicide had been a cause of cancer among some folks there, plaintiffs there. And as a result of this herbicide, glyphosate, and I know I'm not telling our audience anything you don't know, but because it is the most widely used weed killer in the nation, both not only on our farms, but in roadside medians used by, civic governments and in private gardens used by your aunts and uncles and grandmothers and anybody else who tries to tend a garden. Lawyers across the country took notice. They are aware of this too, of how widely used this product is. So if you were, for instance, just trying to enjoy a radio program driving around in your car in Memphis or watching a commercial on the local news broadcast here in Memphis, I mean, gosh, there are ads calling for participants in class action lawsuits against the makers of glyphosate daily. We just have heard them frequently in recent months. And aside from that, on less traditional forms of media, there's no shortage of blog posts from these alarmist writers, wherever they may be, on the internet, that just take it as gospel that glyphosate is this carcinogen, this sinister carcinogen that causes cancer. So unfortunately, if you are an ambulance-chasing lawyer or an alarmist blogger, the science here, again, simply does not support that claim. And I'm editorializing here. I editorialized in the March issue about this. It's a sad reality in America today that we only recognize science if it agrees with what we already think. And so naturally, there are people who were dismissive of these EPA scientific findings that came out in late January. But science doesn't lie, as we know. And science doesn't have a predetermined viewpoint. The facts there are the facts. So that's good news for those of us who work in agriculture. We can continue to safely use every tool that's at our disposal and be able to scratch out a crop under, annually difficult conditions. So, okay, I just wanted to make sure you guys saw that. There was a lot going on there at the end of January, between football and some headlines out of Washington, D.C. with a lot of stuff dominating the news back then, but a couple of weeks ago.
And let me add one thing.
Sure.
Before we break into the next segments, our record here at Cotton Companion remains perfect in terms of mentioning. If you recall our last episode, we spent a lot of time talking about the need for USDA to go ahead and get the authorization for this third tranche of payments on the MFP program, and we made obviously a very convincing argument because several days later, lo and behold, the announcement was made that the third tranche payments were approved and all set. And I'm hoping that everybody who's listening has had a chance to check and make sure those payments have been received at this point. So once again, the Cotton Companion, it's not a curse, I guess.
No, it's not a curse.
No,
it's a curse if you're me and you and there's always, to give you a little peek behind the curtain, there's always a few days in between when we record and when the podcast is published, or in the case of when we write a magazine, I write a column in the second week of, for instance, February that doesn't hit your mailbox until March. So if a headline breaks, if something changes in that 2 or 3 week interval, by the time my story gets to your mailbox, it's outdated. And so that's just what has happened with this third tranche.
I know. We're just going to call it the Cotton Companion Boost.
There you go. Yeah. So I would also like to report that, I should win the lottery here, definitely in a month's time. I will be winning the lottery. So let's just see if that happens in the next couple of days before.
I think it only pertains to cotton-related income.
Yeah, maybe it does. But
we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see. If you do, we'll split it.
Well, how about this? I can report that it seems we're getting word that cotton will be trading at $1.50 here by the time this happens. By the time next week gets here, there we go. So, good deal there. We want to take a brief minute, stop horsing around here, and we want to listen to this message from our previously mentioned our new sponsor, the Cotton Companion's brand new sponsor. And that is Cotton Incorporated. They're going to tell us about this U.S. Cotton Trust Protocol.
As a U.S. cotton producer, you already produce one of the most responsibly grown fibers on the planet. Show the world how you grow with the U.S. Cotton Trust Protocol. The U.S. Cotton Trust Protocol helps market your cotton to the growing list of brands, retailers, and consumers demanding sustainably produced fibers in today's marketplace. So start sharing your sustainability story now at trustuscotton.org. That's trustuscotton.org. The U.S. Cotton Trust Protocol. Are you in?
All right, a huge thank you and a huge shout out to our friends at Cotton Incorporated, our new sponsors. They do so much heavy lifting on behalf of our industry, and we are proud to have them as a sponsor of this podcast. So, Jim, without further ado, please hit us with the news of the day, sir.
I will indeed. And as Beck mentioned, we got a couple items we want to talk about. We're going to lead off with sort of, now that the China trade agreement, the Phase 1 agreement, has been signed, and there's been a little bit of time since the signing ceremony. and folks have had a chance to kind of look at the fine print or the lack of fine print in some of it, we're starting to get a little bit better feel for what may or may not happen with that. And based on a Bloomberg report, we've been quoted, you quoted Reuters, I'm quoting Bloomberg. We're getting into the highfalutin financial news here.
Yeah.
That there's still some skepticism about China's ability to buy as much as $50 million in additional U.S. farm goods since the pact was signed back in January. Some traders, in fact, are believing that China will make good on the pledges, but that most of these purchases are going to come in the second half of the year. So it's going to require a little patience. It's sort of one of those Lee Corso, not so fast, my friend, moments.
Yeah.
But now with the coronavirus beginning to impact production and trade in China, there are also some initial concerns that China is going to seek to implement a clause in the agreement that basically delays compliance with the deal, and I'm quote here, in the event of a natural disaster or other unforeseeable event. Now, what impact this is going to have on moving U.S. cotton into China in the short term is not yet known, although latest U.S. export reports showed a really healthy movement of cotton out of the U.S. into some of our key export markets, but China was not among those countries. All that to say, it's good that we have a deal in place, but it's likely going to take some patience on the part of U.S. farmers before we start seeing direct benefits from this agreement, which trade experts say could potentially come nearer harvest time this year. So something to keep in mind. We're all watching the news on this, and hopefully we'll get things settled out and get this agreement up and moving.
Yeah, obviously I would not make light of, would never make light of the coronavirus, all that's going on in China around this epidemic. I guess would be the right word to call it. And that surely would be a legitimate reason, as you just explained, to kind of gum up the wheels of this trade agreement that came across. But I would note that it's interesting to remember that people like Jody Campeche a year ago were saying when this trade deal or when this trade dispute started breaking out, she wouldn't be surprised if it went on into the election, went on into November of this year. And here you are with this report saying that the Chinese may not be able to comply until, quote, harvest time. So interesting, just an interesting thing to remember what a lot of these market watchers have been saying.
Yeah, people who watch the market are pretty good at what they do.
Yeah, especially Jody. She's an extremely sharp person.
Absolutely. Moving on, Americot, friends at Americot have recently announced 2 new next-gen varieties for 2020 based on the testing performance in the company's Americot cotton evaluation trials in 2019. Those 2 varieties, the first one is NG 4098 B3XF, and it's a new medium maturing variety with best-in-class fiber quality and the B3XF technology, obviously. It performed very well in stressful environments in 2019. It has excellent heat tolerance and an exceptional overall disease package. In the trials, the variety showed excellent adaptability across multiple soil types and locations. The second variety is an XtendFlex variety only. That's NG 4050XF, and it's basically targeted into the plains of Texas and Oklahoma. It's a medium maturing variety. It has good tolerance to verticillium wilt, what they're calling excellent tolerance to bacterial blight, along with outstanding fiber package and yield potential. So for more details about these varieties and the entire next-gen lineup for 2020, please look for your next-gen seed dealer, your next-gen representative, or visit Americot.com online. And I'm thinking with that announcement, that pretty much takes care of most of the should take care of the new variety announcements for 2020.
Yeah, I believe those next-gen brand varieties were the last couple that we were waiting on there. No doubt those folks out there at Americot are excited about those two, and for good reason. Americot has seen a meteoric rise in market share over the past few years, so they're on to something out there. I bet these two will do quite well as well.
Absolutely. Moving on, building on its program success in the U.S. over the last few years, the folks at Wrangler are now expanding their science and conservation program into Europe to help promote sustainable ag production and land stewardship practices to enhance or advance soil health and traceability in the supply chain. They made that announcement February 5th during an international agricultural fair in Greece. Now, launched in 2017, this Wrangler program is an alliance of industry experts, farmers, and nonprofit partners that sponsor research, farmer workshops, and promote soil health farming practices. One of its primary goals is to help build a more resilient and regenerative cotton supply, but the program is not exclusive to cotton and can be adapted or adopted by all farmers and ranchers. And that all ties into Wrangler's goal of sourcing 100% of its cotton from farms using land stewardship practices by 2025. Now, in the U.S., as we've talked about before, Wrangler joined forces with BASF in 2019 to advance traceability for sustainable cotton. This initiative linked on-farm sustainable performance with finished garments and helped launch the Wrangler Rooted Collection, in which 5 farming families provided sustainable cotton in a special assortment of jeans and shirts made with the E3 cotton. And as Beck mentioned, we're going to hear more about this increased interest in the E3 program during this episode's market segment. And finally, just a reminder that USDA's Farm Service Agency is strongly encouraging producers to enroll now in the ARC and PLC programs. The sign-up deadline for the 2019 crop year is March 16th, so we're just weeks away from the deadline on that. FSA says if producers who farmed in 2019 do not make a timely, unanimous election during the sign-up period, the 2018 selections will continue for 2019 and 2020, which will then result in the farm not being eligible for any 2019 payments. Producers that make a program election and enroll a farm prior to the deadline have the option to change the program election up until March 16th. So if you haven't already made your decisions, FSA has several fact sheets and online decision tools available on the website at www.fsa.usda.gov. You can check with your local FSA county office for an enrollment appointment. And that's the news.
Very good, very good. Yeah, y'all don't let that deadline sneak up on you. Okay, Jim, we are going to hold you there. Thank you for that, as always. But we want to have time for this brief interview you conducted with my good friend Jennifer Crumpler. She is the Fiber Development Manager there at BASF. I know you guys were talking about this surge of popularity in the E3 program. If our listeners will recall, back last fall, back in September, I spent a few days down in Natchez, Mississippi, and across the river there in Louisiana. That was back in September. We were studying up on that E3 program, and it's a pretty sharp deal. It's a promoter of cotton demand. The idea is to boost cotton demand through showcasing these sustainable efforts and through setting up these metrics of sustainability that farmers can point to in order to better market ourselves as American cotton growers. And so Jennifer is a huge champion of that effort, and BASF is to be applauded for that whole program. So that was, I'm awful at math, 5 months? I can't do simple math.
Close enough.
But it was almost half a year ago. We'll leave it at that. And so I'm sure a lot has happened since then, and I'm very interested in checking back in or listening to Jim having checked back in with her in this segment now. So without further ado, here is Jennifer Crumpler of BASF in today's Market Minute segment.
Welcome to this episode's Market segment. It's early January, which means it's time for the Beltwide Cotton Conferences. And one of the main topics of focus at this year's Beltwide Conference is sustainability. Joining me today is Jennifer Crumpler. She is the Fiber Development Manager for BASF. Jennifer, thanks for joining us today.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Jim.
In your role with BASF, you're heading up the company's E3 program, which has been active for several years. We've known about it in the market for a number of years, but it really seems to have kicked into a higher gear here recently. Can you explain the program and why we're seeing such a surge in its popularity?
Absolutely. So, as you mentioned, we've had the program around a few years with Sustainable Fiber Max, but I think there's a couple of things that have happened over the last year. One being that when BASF purchased the seed business previously, BASF is very committed to sustainability, not just to have a program, but to truly live out that life of sustainability.
And this is a global sustainability effort,
it's a global sustainability initiative. I mean, just recently, BASF in Brazil was named the most sustainable company in Brazil. So they truly are committed to that. And we've seen that in the past year, and their dedication and their involvement, investment in this program, and truly saying, okay, this is what we want to do, what we want to see, and where we see that future going. So I think that's a huge piece of it, to be with a company that truly invests in sustainability. And then another piece of it is really that consumers are starting to demand that, and we're seeing it more. For years, you look at, you go in the grocery store now, you go in and say, these sweet potatoes are grown by this farmer in North Carolina. And, that is actually starting to change to go to other segments. So it's not just in the food industry. We've seen that surge in other areas. So whether it's clothing or whether it's done, and people, consumers want to know. And, BASF is very well known in other areas, not just agriculture and textiles, manufacturing, other things. And so that's why many of the retailers and brands and home goods companies we've been working with have really kind of drawn to our E3 program and saying, okay, this is a company that we trust. And so on this division, their ag piece of it, okay, we trust what they're doing with the cotton piece of it. So, that's where a lot of the different things are coming. So we're excited about what we saw in 2019 and even bigger things for 2020.
What are sort of the foundations that the E3 program is built on?
Yeah, so when you think about sustainability, you truly think about people, money, the environment. I mean, economics. That's just kind of what it is. So when we have our E3 program, our 3 E's are, making sure that it's economically viable. So making sure that our cotton is grown with our farmers in a way that, helps them make money, be sustainable in the future to continue to be there, that it's environmentally responsible, so that we know, and you and I know, and most people know, farmers are the best stewards of the land everywhere, but just telling that story of what they're doing on the environment, and then making sure that it's socially equitable. So really, just the people piece of it, whether it's our farmers or those on the farm who are helping them with their operation, or whether it's, whatever piece it may be of it. So that's really the foundation that we build it on, and what we do, we talk about it all the time, and I'm sure you hear it too in your line of work. You ask someone who's like, oh, well, I'm just a farmer. And I'm like, no, you're not just a farmer. You get to be a farmer. Do you know how awesome that is? You're the most trusted source out there. And so that's one thing we're really doing, is just kind of helping tell that story for our growers.
Sure, absolutely. Now, you mentioned in the presentation earlier today that you're just a small town girl from North Carolina, and I think you said, St. Paul's?
Yes,
okay.
Yes.
But you also said because of that, this E3 program means an awful lot to you personally. Can you explain why?
Yeah, so growing up in the South, as I'm sure many people did, we're a big textile town. So we had very small town. I mean, I don't even think our population was 3,500 or less, but we had 3 Burlington Mills and Industries in my town that sponsored every Little League team and every Christmas parade and float and pageant. I mean, it's just what we were. And then, some of the things happened and years went on and different trade agreements. And then what do you know? Now all 3 buildings are sitting empty in my town. And these are mills that, I grew up in, the people in my church worked in, my mother, my grandmother, my mom, they called her old Mill Hill child because she grew up over, a block away from one of the mills. And so, to see the opportunity, to kind of bring some excitement back into that textile piece of it and, tell that story and kind of move all the pieces together. For me, that's where my passion came from. And, as we mentioned, you had heard here, there's a brand new textile mill opening up in Vidalia.
I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah, in Vidalia, Louisiana. And I think Beck talked about it earlier on one of you guys' episodes. You got to come down and tour it. And we're so excited because they truly are building and really movement to bring things back to the U.S., and showing that textile and that piece of it can survive and thrive here. And we're excited that they're, partnered with us. They're only going to use 100% E3 cotton. So for me, man, how exciting is that?
Makes your job easier.
It makes it, sometimes. But, but it's one of those where we, some of the looms, some of the things, they brought in there. I told my grandma the other day, I was like, well, Grandma, if you ever feel like going back to work, I've got some looms and some draper looms you can work in Louisiana. She's like, nope, I had my fair share, honey, but I'm so glad you're working to bring it back.
Now, you mentioned obviously all of this cotton that's going through this mill is E3. And I know as part of the tour that Beck was on, he talked about there were a number of folks there from companies, some of who had never seen cotton in the world in their lives and other things. What kind of companies were these? Who were these people?
So the companies were some of the brands and retailers that we, all know about. JCPenney had some there, Gap, J. Crew, Banana Republic, Wrangler had people there. But it wasn't just that. It was, the thing that was great about it is I've since then found out, is in that apparel textile space, we were seen as the event of the year to be invited to, because, I've already since then had many people reach out and say, hey, can I get on your invite list for next year? And so we had, and it wasn't just the, a lower level person. It was senior VP levels that came in. And people were making the decisions. And are we going to use cotton? Or are we going to use polyester or another synthetic when they're doing their clothes? And, some of these people making these decisions had never seen a cotton plant. Like, basically, they'd never seen cotton. They'd never seen a farmer. They didn't know the technology that they're using and doing. And so the excitement to see that and for them to be able to realize, oh, wait, and truly, as I always say, the face of cotton, putting that cotton, that farmer, that he's not a farmer hurting the land. This is a father and a dad and someone who's doing everything he can for his, take this through to the next generation. And it was just exciting to see, the home goods or the apparel, those level people, whether it was a Gap or someone else, say, oh, wow, okay, I get it. I understand now. Cotton isn't dirty. Cotton is not dirty.
I have always said cotton is probably the most fascinating crop grown in the U.S., if not the world. There's just something about it. Yes. And I'm not saying that as an editor of the publication, but it's true. I mean, there's something about it that just, once you see it, it just gets you.
It kind of draws you in, and I think for me, we talk about sustainability and it being the whole big picture of it. And I think that's why I'm so, like you said, cotton is just the best, because cotton kind of tells you a whole story. It tells you a story, and it'll tell you, hey, it's emergence coming up, and then it's growing, and okay, and you can look at that plant, as and say, okay, what did its life look like? Did it have a rough life or a good life? At the end, then you can take and you pick it and harvest it, and you can make this beautiful fabric or beautiful things. But you also can take it and make decorations, or like me, I'm that girl. When I got married a few years ago, I went to my local cotton gin and got some of the fuzzy seed, and I put it inside of Christmas ornaments and decorated them, gave those to my bridesmaids. That was their card when they sat down, their table seating thing. And it's so, there's all the things you can do with it. I'm like, oh man, let me think of something else we can do.
Now you mentioned home goods, obviously retail clothing brands that are very interested in this. What other markets are you kind of hearing from right now that might be able to, the program might be able to expand?
Yeah, so when you think about cotton, a lot of times people think about blue jeans and stuff, and so we also think about some cotton furniture, some cotton apparel, cotton things, but we're really seeing a lot of interest, which is a very interesting thing, from the hospitality industry.
Okay.
So from cruise lines to hotels to things, because people want to be able to say, okay, in every aspect of my life, whether it's the food I'm eating, the clothes I'm wearing, or the businesses, the hotel I stay at, are they truly being sustainable? And so that's really been exciting to see that whole message evolve around it.
That's great. Yeah. Sounds like there's still a lot to do.
There is. There's a lot to do. And the good thing about it, Mr. Jim, that is great is that, I've had a lot of growers ask me, well, okay, this is good, but what else have I got to do? What have I got to do to be enrolled? What do I got to do to be a part of it? And that's the great thing is that for us, this E3 is for their Stoneville and FiberMax cotton varieties.
Right.
And really, only thing they have to do is through their seed advisor, BASF rep, to get enrolled in it. And we help them map out their field, capture some information on that field, which really is nothing different than what they're doing. They, not change their practices, but just capture what they're doing, help them identify, okay, hey, this is the area I'm really good in being sustainable, or, maybe I'm not as good in this area. And, so they can look at their practice and their farm operation, and then, be enrolled in it and let us help kind of tell that story for them.
That's great. Jennifer, thank you. It has certainly been a pleasure talking to you about this. We're certainly going to be keeping an eye on it for a little bit more growth.
Oh, even more. Absolutely.
All right. Thank you. Now, back to the rest of the Cotton Companion.
So, all right. Well, we want to give a big thank you to Jennifer and BASF. She was so gracious to visit with Jim, and we appreciate her. Okay, so that's going to just about do it for this installment of the Cotton Companion podcast. We want to thank Phytogen for sponsoring us. We want to thank Cotton Incorporated with the Cotton Trust Protocol. And we want to thank you, dear listener, for joining us. If you like what you're hearing, tell your buddies about us. They can get to us in 3 easy ways. The first is going to cottongrower.com/companion, and you will find all of our archived 65 episodes on a landing page there. The second way, you can subscribe to our channel on iTunes or however it is you find your podcast these days. Simply search for the Cotton Companion in those little apps there. And the third way, the best way, make sure you're signed up for our weekly e-newsletter, the Cotton Grower e-news. You can do that by going to www.cottongrower.com/subscribe. Also, make sure you're following us on social media. We are at Cotton Grower Mag on Twitter, and on Facebook you can find us simply by searching for Cotton Grower Magazine. We hope that you are enjoying our latest issue. The February issue should be hitting your mailboxes soon. So, this podcast is produced by Mr. Tyler Hatch. He works at the mothership, Meister Media Worldwide, in beautiful Willoughby, Ohio. My name is Beck Barnes, and I'm going to be back with you in 2 weeks on the next installment of the Cotton Companion. For now, on behalf of my own Cotton Companion, Mr. Jim Steadman, we wish you and your operation all the best.
Yeah, he works and he works and he works and he works and he works all day. God made it fun.
Phytogen thanks you for listening to this edition of the Cotton Companion. To learn how you can thrive with Phytogen, go to phytogen.com.